to today's episode of The Scoop, where seniors can overcome obstacles proactively. My name is Denise, and with me today is Arthur Pike. Hi, Arthur.
Hi, Denise.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm thrilled to be here.
So I'm going to let you guys know a little bit about Arthur. Arthur is the CEO of River City Home Care. His background includes training, dementia care, coaching, psychology of aging, and falls prevention, just to name a few. He received his Bachelor's of Art in Psychology from the University of Texas here in San Antonio. And we are very excited to have you here with us today to just educate our audience on what is home care. So that's where I'm going to start. So I'm going to kind of let you talk to our audience about what is home care.
Okay, yeah. You know, home care is really non-medical home care, such as personal care, homemaker services, companionship, that's provided by a professional caregiver.
Okay.
You know, home care really fills the gap where your traditional Medicare or traditional commercial insurance leaves off. And what I mean by that is that we'll go in and we're really more extension of family. So we'll be there, 4 hours up to 24 hours a day. So we become kind of that extension of family, the voice of the person that we're helping and caring for.
So what type of services are typically offered in home care?
Yeah, so good question. It's easier to almost say the things that we can't do than it is the things that we can do, because the reality is when someone asks us to go to their house and care for them or for a loved one, we'll really kind of go in and take over and do anything that they need us to do. We're never there to take their independence away. We really are there to keep them independent. So if that involves bathing, dressing, toileting, feeding, ambulation, transferring assistance, or really just monitoring for safety, we can do those things. We can also, since we're there, we really can do the light housekeeping, so we can keep things tidy for them. We can remind them to take their medications. We can make sure that they're safe. If there's any cognitive issues, make sure that they're not walking out of the house or wherever they call their home. Home care fills in the gap where your traditional Medicare home health groups take over. Is while we're there, we're going to help them that they're safe in their home, that they keep their independence. Well,
I'm glad that you brought that up. I don't want to interrupt you, but and I actually didn't have this question on my cards, but there's a difference between home health and home care. So home health is something that's going to be covered by Medicare for so many days, but when you're talking home care, you're talking about one-on-one private duty care.
That's right. Yeah. So imagine if you have a loved one or you go to the hospital after maybe breaking a hip. It's a good example. And then they go home with rehab. They might go to a rehab location and rehab there, and then go home and have physical therapy, maybe nursing care, even speech therapy can happen, or occupational therapy. All that is covered through Medicare or a traditional insurance, commercial insurance.
But it's not long term.
It's not long term. That's right. It's usually 6 to 8 weeks. They can recertify them, typically 2 weeks more, which means they get 2 additional weeks. But it's something that the doctor sends home with them, and it's a script, like you get a script for prescriptions. But it's very temporary. And normally, like a therapist might come in, it might be there for an hour or less. Where we will come in is we're actually there 4 hours with them, up to 24 hours, and really helping them with all the rest of the activities of daily living.
That's very important. So how is home care services paid for?
Yeah, so good question. I mean, home care services have never been deemed as a reimbursable entity through Medicare or traditional insurance. So because of that, it's really an out-of-pocket expense. So it's what we call private pay in our business. It's a private pay out-of-pocket expense. Or if you have bought a long-term care policy through a financial advisor or work, they cover that, and they'll cover for us to come in to do that. But
What
that's,
about aid and attendance? Does aid and attendance cover home care?
Yep, so good questions for our veterans, and we work really closely with the group to help with our veterans and getting them additional care. So Denise brings up the aid and attendance, and so aid and attendance is really an additional benefit that a veteran gets that provides them care at home.
That's great. So those are, so even though that it is a private pay, there are some other resources out there which Arthur and his group would be able to help you with in the event that you needed home care. What should seniors or caregivers look into home care for themselves? Like, when's the right time for them to look into?
So good question. You know, normally you really are looking at the best time is before an incident happens. Remember that. It's really important that if you are going into seeing your parents or your grandparents or a neighbor or a relative or a friend, and you see maybe personal hygiene start to scale back. So maybe grandma always did her hair really nice, makeup very nice, and you're starting to see that that's starting to she's starting to scale back. You know, sometimes you may go into a house of one of your loved ones and there's an odor that you haven't smelled. It could be that they're not telling you, but they could be having accidents, like, you know, incontinence issues. And so that's a perfect time to start really evaluating and thinking about calling, you know, a home care company and having a professional caregiver come in and help you with identifying. Because what happens is if you notice those small things, really what starts to happen is the next thing could be a devastating fall with a broken hip.
So it's better to be proactive instead of reactive, which is the whole point, obviously, of us educating our audience, is to try to give our caregivers tips on things that will help them be proactive to prevent things like we see all the time.
Yeah, and you know, when you bring up the caregiver, so the primary caregiver, if there's a husband and wife, and let's say the wife is the primary caregiver, we also need to take care of her. Don't lose sight that what happens oftentimes is the person that needs the care, the primary caregiver, is doing everything for them and stops to take care of themselves. And a lot of times they end up being the one that ends up in the hospital with a broken hip because they've done so much for the person they were caring for.
They wear themselves down.
They wear themselves down.
And that's a good thing too. Adult children that are out there, sons and daughters, pay attention to that. Sometimes your parents won't necessarily be forthcoming with you about that, but that's a very good thing to look out for if you see mom or dad, whichever way it could be, starting to not take care of themselves. Just a couple hours a day to help out with some routine things to take a little burden off them can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm. Just give them the break, even if it's allowing them to sleep later. You know, maybe we go in, maybe dad wakes up early and we kind of help him prepare his breakfast and remind him to get his medication and maybe take him for a walk if he wants to do those things so that mom can sleep later. Those, you know, and get her rest. So said when we leave, she could take care of him rested.
So if you get a phone call from someone and they're evaluating whether they should go with home care for their loved ones, how do you all make the routines specific to them?
Yeah, you know, we really go in and we do a comprehensive assessment. Okay. You know, so we'll go in and it's individualized based off the need of the person that we're going to be there, and we also, you know, we usually typically will spend 2 to 4 hours. Don't get scared off by that, but we're normally not going to look very clinical, meaning that I'm not going to take a clipboard out and paper and start jotting down everything that we need to do, because we know that there's reluctancy in them having care, having a stranger in their house, all those things we understand very well.
Sure.
You know, the thing with River City Home Care is that we've done it for 15 years and we've just done home care. We haven't done it, you know, all the other stuff. We really are very good at knowing the questions to ask, the appearance, how we appear, things that we say, identifying, you know, if there is a potential that they've been falling. So you notice bruises, you know, a lot of times on their arms. They may be holding on in the bathroom, and you know, and that's what's causing them, is that they're you know, they hold on with their arms, and so we may notice that and make a note of we may need to stand by during bath time, or we may need to be there. We don't necessarily have to bathe them. We just need to potentially help them prep and be right outside the door if they need us.
Yeah.
And then when it gets to it, we definitely can do the bathing if it gets to that as well. But we really understand to kind of individualize, figuring out what they need, figuring out if there's pets. What are the pets' names?
That's so important. I mean, it's their life.
It's their life. Yeah. It's their life. And offering the if the pet doesn't get to, if it's a dog and doesn't get walked, we'll walk their dog, and we'll encourage them to come with us. Even if it's a walker, because that might help them get a little bit of exercise. That's very important for our senior population.
Well, it's very obvious and apparent to me that you all are experts in what you do. Thank you so much for coming and sharing with our audience some good tips and things to look for. Would you care to just take a minute to let them know how they would actually get in contact with River City Home Care?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Denise, very much. It's a thrill to be here. River City Home Care, best way to reach us really is the phone number. It's 210-342-2273. That's 210-342-2273. You can always look us up also at rivercityhomecare.com. A lot of information on the website and a lot of resources to kind of help you.
Awesome. So thank you guys so much for joining us for today's episode of The Scoop, and stay tuned to next week. So I'm here today with Arthur from River City Home Care, and we are enjoying a Nutella sundae from Bee's Knees and Stone Oak. Thank you, Bee's Knees.
Delish.
And remember, if you're ever in need for your aging loved ones, our services are free. Call us today. Our number is located at the bottom of the screen.